Roll action!
Hello?
Alright, I guess we'll just sort of start with this. Say your name and character name.
Okay, my name is Dan, and my character is called Dojo. Like Dojo, Class Dojo, because it was originally called Dojo Joe, but the kids said that was too much for a mouthful. And some other suggestions I had were Dojo Dan, ironically, Dojo Dave, and Dojo Jerry, or Dojo Jerry. I chose Dojo because I feel that was the shortest, the most efficient, and I think that could really work. I feel that can be sort of iconic and short, easy to remember. First question, please.
Okay. Right. What are the key principles of character design, especially when targeting a younger audience?
Well, I thought, I did a little bit of research and I did a bit about primary colours and colour wheel in general. I feel like using primary colours mostly appeals mostly to children, as colours in general, but I feel like the primary colours, they stand out more. So I decided to limit my design mostly to primary colours, blues, greens, no, not greens, blues, yellows, reds, and a bit of orange in there just for to be a bit more complementary to the reds and the yellows. So I feel like narrowing it down mostly to basic colours, I feel this could really appeal to young children visually.
What about use of shapes? What kind of shapes are they wanting? Are they wanting simple or are they wanting kind of more complex shapes?
Well, I wanted to keep it really vaguely simple, so my initial design limited to very simplistic shapes such as like circles and a triangular sort of body, but of course now in my finalised design, obviously I have made it more sophisticated a little bit, but still keeping it relatively simple, relatively basic shapes, things like that really.
Do you worry the use of blue takes away from the gender neutralness of the character? So it might not appeal to both male and females in the class.
I don't think particularly. I think we got relatively positive reception. I feel like I think it's an interesting character, very visually. I didn't think we had any real divide between the. I do think that's something maybe to consider, but I don't think from what we got, I don't think that was really an issue.
Speaking of appealing, what about your character appeals to the children? Sort of like, is it exaggerated in any way?
Well, one of the things I think the kids found most humorous was really the muscular design. I think they thought that was very funny, like very superhero sort of, or sort of clump. They thought the characteristics they had was very heavy-footed, muscularly sort of walk. I thought it was like that's sort of like how they perceived it. They thought that was sort of very funny. And of course that sort of connotations with that, they thought it would have like a very cartoony but sort of deeper, medium to medium pitched sort of voice. So yeah, I thought they did think that was kind of humorous. So I guess reminiscent of like superheroes or sort of the more muscular characters than you see in cartoons. So yeah, they thought it'd be very funny. Actually, they thought that was sort of have a very funny voice. Well, that's sort of like a random kind of reference they said was they thought it would have an Eddie Murphy voice, which I thought was kind of peculiar, but I mean, they're the
when
audience.
When you were designing it, are they the functions that you necessarily intended to come across?
Yeah, that was sort of how I was coming across. I did think I wasn't really say superhero sort of route, but I was sort of going down and sort of maybe like a bit more maybe of a muscular sort of character, maybe a little bit leaning on the superhero sort of route. And I think that was sort of my intention, and so I'm glad that was sort of how it came across. I mean, it's good to see your intentions come across even to the younger audiences if you're reaching out to them. I mean, yeah.
Why did you make the design decisions that you did based on your target audience?
Well, like I say, going back to the colours, I think that kind of I definitely did a lot of research into the colour wheel, and I think that was very crucial towards the overall aesthetic of the character. I feel like, I mean, I'm not really into the genre myself, but I do understand there is a big demand, well, I say a big interest in superheroes. I researched for the target age group of around 10, 9, so that kind of age group. And I also wanted to make it sort of more cartoony as well. So yeah.
Okay, so in terms of, you've got the basic shape of the character, or the silhouette as such. What is the importance of that shape or silhouette in animation?
Can you elaborate? I'm a bit confused.
Why have you shaped him the way he is in regards to animation? So, why have you decided to go humanoid compared to animalistic? Or why have you chosen the shape that you have for animation in general?
Well, I feel like a very simplistic design of a human, I think, is more. I think it's more relatable when it comes to animating. Like, I know a lot of animators, they take after themselves in terms of movement. Like when they add things out, I think that'd be very easier to replicate on a human design, in opposed to maybe an animal design when you have to do more research into sort of their characteristics, how they move, articulation, things like that. But I think also in general, I feel like it's easier to really, I'll say in general, simplify a humanoid's morph design. I feel like the movement of them can be sort of more simplistic. I feel like sort of easier to replicate, I suppose, from memory and just general experience, I feel. So I think that's why I went down the humanoid route, and of course keeping it very simple. I feel like the silhouette sort of design, I think I can, particularly the hair. One of the things I did get I feel they said the hair needs a little bit of work maybe just to perfect it. But that said, I feel like the way my character design is looking already, I feel like the hair is already slightly differing from this design. So I feel like maybe I've sort of nailed the hair, or getting close to it in general.
Okay. As we're, on the topic of movement and that kind of thing, what is the role of body language in character animation?
I feel like the body language, can express a lot of different emotion, a lot of different, sort of obviously conveys the character in movements, emotion, personality. Like some of the things I actually got from what the children said was they said that they imagine the character being very fast, which I suppose fits into sort of the more muscular sort of physique of a character. Obviously, like I said, heavy-footed, sort of a muscular walk. I guess that kind of works. So I think that is very important in terms of conveying a character's personality, their actions, sort of persona. And of course, I guess I would tie in also to a narrative as well. I mean, how they would react in certain scenes, how they move about in certain scenes, and things like that.
Okay, and sorry, I'm really not good at thinking questions together. So you were talking about the sort of muscular side of things, which I guess would, with that would come sort of with the anatomy and things like that. What kind of considerations have you made with the proportions of your anatomy, like the size of your arms or legs, when designing the character for a child audience? And how would these considerations differ if you were designing a more adult character?
Well, so far I'm still working on the arms. I didn't want to make it like too muscly because I thought that would be a bit more unusual, for a kid's character. I didn't want to go down that route. I wanted to make it, like I said, I wanted to make it more simplistic, not overly like detailed, not like hyper realistic. I mean, obviously I wanted to keep it very cartoony, very simplistic, like I did. I mean, like I said, originally my design was comprised of very like simplistic shapes and images. I thought that would be now I want to keep things very simple, more cartoony, not hyper realistic. And so like I said, if I was trying to make like more, I think hyperrealism usually tends to be more for adult oriented material. I've not, obviously not all the time, but I think in general. So if I was to make it more hyper realistic, obviously I'd add more muscles and like sort of like an actual proper superhero movie. Add more muscles. Obviously there'd be a lot more detailing around the facial structure and things like that, I suppose.
Speaking of the face, how have you designed the facial features to convey a range of emotion? And what are the importance of having different expressions in character animation?
Well, I did a bit of research and I found there's actually Specifically in cartoons, there's also facial features can convey a lot of different emotions, usually just through the features themselves, as opposed to, say, muscle or bone structure. Because a lot of cartoons don't necessarily have that. So I found the eyes and the mouth in general, I mean the eyebrows, they can all convey a lot of different emotion without, say, the actual bone structure of the character necessarily being altered too much. So I feel like that's definitely the route I was going to go down with my own character. So expressing more emotion solely through the eyes and mouth, and of course the eyebrows as well. So yeah, I think that definitely comes back into it when it comes to making things simplistic, and it might be an issue maybe when moulding, but that's definitely something to take into account, trying to keep things simplistic, have more of a fixed head structure, and solely do an animation through the eyes and mouth, which need to be supposedly moulded to cater to our purpose.
Right. How does clothing contribute to a character's identity and appeal? What sort of clothes would you want to put onto a children's character?
Well, of course, you see in cartoons quite a lot. Specifically, the teachers have maybe an image or something that conveys the character's personality. Mostly, I mean, I suppose just like in real life, how people get like t-shirts to fit their personality, I suppose. So, well, by here I decided to put just maybe as more of an initial concept. I put the initials of the Class Dojo. I mean, if we're supposed to be sort of it's supposed to tie into Class Dojo, I feel like, and it's supposed to be a mascot at the end of the day, I feel like I should probably highlight the company's website. I feel like maybe that might be a little like some of the feedback I got was that could be mistaken for maybe the character themselves initials, so maybe that might be something to consider. And I think upon giving it second thought, I think maybe if the company has a logo or something, maybe that could be a better fit towards the character's sort of t-shirt. And I think so, yeah, I felt that was something to take into account. And so yeah, I decided to keep the clothing, of course, like I said, mostly primary colours. I mean, supposedly sort of to tie into sort of those factors I mentioned earlier. So yeah.
Okay. Right, a little bit of change of
structure, facial features. I mean, I was going to have very simplistic facial features, maybe just dots for eyes, things like that. But now I figured, you know, I need to give maybe some irises and things like that. Obviously, I decided to make it a little bit more muscular on the arms if I was going to have that sort of I guess superhero kind of physique there, a bit more muscular maybe. I decided to add some clothes, obviously. So I decided to go maybe like sort of basic sort of like superhero sort of almost like pajama looking clothes. And so obviously I took that into account. Obviously gave some colours to it, took into account it's for Class Dojo, added the logo, wasn't thinking to do that originally, or I mean initials. And obviously took into account the colour wheel as well, and added the colours accordingly. Just went from there, different shades, different colours.
I'm going to add one in here. When taking it from 2D to 3D, how do you expect the character will evolve in terms of design?
Well, I mean the hair specifically, here I've drawn it like sort of more basic, sort of bumpy. I know from moulding from experience that, like I said earlier, does look quite different, and obviously the hair needed a little bit of work, but I feel like when I'm going down this route, it's already looking a little bit different. I think maybe I'm on the right path there. And I feel, obviously we are having a bit of complications, like one of the ones I had initially. Well, I didn't really have it initially, but I am sort of having it now. I feel like the character, like the actual 3D model was a little bit too thin. Like I wanted to make it a little bit wider, sort of like broader on the shoulders maybe, and the arms. I didn't want it to look sort of too like stick-like, and I feel that's the path it's going down already. And so yeah, I feel like that's definitely something I need to take into account. And obviously there's clothes, I still need to mould the clothes and everything on. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. I didn't want the head to be too thin either. I wanted it to sort of be more spherical, and at the moment my 3D model isn't looking very spherical, so I need to definitely work on that.
Excellent.
You
I
got
think that's it.
anything to add?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, I think we're done here then.
Cut!
That's good, yeah.